Hi, this is my review of Combat Commander Europe, published by GMT Games. So first up, the rule book. The rules are about 20 odd pages. Don't be intimidated by that. It's a fairly straightforward game to get into, I'll be honest with you, as tactical war games go. The rules are very, very well written. They explain the mechanics. There are examples of play. The layout is really nicely done. I would say they are written in such a way that they just describe the rules. They don't necessarily describe the experience, if that makes sense. So, to start with, when you first get the game, you're going to have to read through the rule book and then put some counters out and have a try at doing movement and combat, etc. As opposed to some rule books which kind of talk you through how you play the game whilst you're playing it. This doesn't do that. But for all that, it's very well written, and it's a good reference point as well. Once you start playing, you just want to refer back to the rulebook by the organisation of the rules. Very well, very well done, and you get a handy index at the back, which you will probably be referring to quite a bit when you first start to learn to play the game. So you also get the playbook, which has all the details for all the various scenarios in the game. And the game comes with counters and scenarios for German forces, Russian forces, and American forces as well. And there's a massive amount of scenarios in the game. Let's have a look. 12 scenarios. There are a whole bunch of different maps. We'll have a look at one of those in a minute. I think you get 12 maps. The scenarios are all very well laid out. They tell you what forces are going to be using on both sides. They also tell you all the specific rules and special rules pertaining to that mission, that scenario, and they give you a little bit of historical background to the scenario as well, which is absolutely great. Very well laid out, very well written. It's very clear. No problem at all. Now, in addition to the number of scenarios, which is a great amount, you also get some design playtest notes, which is absolutely wonderful. You get a complete example of play, which is great as you learn in the game. And then you get something at the end, which isn't often spoke about actually within the community, but you get a random scenario generator. And you can use this along with a couple of player aids to create your own scenarios. And for a long time, I'd be honest with you, I just played the scenarios that came with the game. And then one afternoon, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give this a try, and it was a lot of fun. Actually creating your own scenario and then playing that scenario was really quite an engaging experience. I guess because you've made it your own, right? It's something you've done, you've put effort into it. I created a little narrative for mine, and it tells you exactly how all that you would do all those sort of things. So yeah, another great addition. Like I said, in terms of content in the game for your money, this game is great. You get a lot of scenarios, you get a lot of maps, you get masses of counters, which we'll have a look at, and that scenario generator. So yeah, huge amount of content for your money. So in this example here, I've got one of the scenarios sort of in progress, just so you can see the map and the counters. The map is paper and it's under plexiglass at the moment. I would say I've played all the scenarios multiple times of this game. The maps held up well and they're double-sided. The content, the artwork of the map is very functional. I think it has a certain charm and a certain aesthetic. But I would describe it as very functionally led. So it's very clear what all the different types of environments are within the hexes. The counters themselves are nicely done. It's very clear the contents of the counter. They feature artwork to represent whether they're squads and so forth, and they're very nicely done. And the counters themselves, they're maybe a little thin on the card, if I'm being honest, but they serve their purpose nicely. The hexes are large, which is great, which means you can, instead of stacking the counters on top of each other, you can lay them next to each other all within the contents of the hex, which I think looks really good. At the top, and I'm just going to move the camera. Apologies if this jolts a little bit. At the top here, just out of view, is all your sort of player aid, or I describe it as a player aid really for progress of the game. So where you are in terms of the time track, casualties, what year you're playing in, and so forth and so forth. But really, the main focus is going to be actually on the game map itself, and it's nicely done. I think from a component point of view, everything is great as you'd expect. Now, this is a card-driven game, which I'm going to talk a bit more about. We'll talk about the mechanics. The cards themselves are nicely done. They're a nice material. They feel good. Very durable. Again, these have been shuffled. I haven't sleeved them. I know a lot of people do. These have been shuffled and played with numerous times, I would say, and have held up very well. So component-wise, the game is absolutely great. Now, in my version, I got this handy counter tray, and it just shows you the amount of counters that you get. Not only do you get the sort of American forces, and you've got normal squads, you've got elite squads and support weapon squads and individual counters for different captains and sergeants and whatnot. You also get the same for the German forces and for the Soviet forces as well, and you get a lot of them. And then you have all the gameplay counters as well. So when if you upgrade your units to a veteran, which can happen in the game, counters for that, counters for where there's foxholes and barbed wire and smoke and all those sort of things. All very nicely done, and like I said, you get a lot. You get a lot of content in the game. Now we come to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the game, and this is really the main point of this review, I think. Now, the game is unique, I'll say, for tactical World War II games in that it's completely card driven. So you don't, as the player, you don't decide, I'm going to move and then I'm going to shoot, and this defensive fire from the opposing player. Instead, you are dealt a number of cards per turn, and the card amount depends on whether you're defending and attacking or so forth. And you can only do, I've just pulled 4 cards here for the German, for example. You can only do what cards you have been dealt. And depending on the nation and the type of troops you've got, you might not be able to use all the cards in your turn. So, for example, as a German player, I've got a move card and I've got a fire card. So I can use one commander in the command radius to fire these counters at the opposing player, for example. And I could move these counters if I wanted to use that move card. And it sounds quite straightforward, and it really is as simple as that. The actual reality of playing the game is that's great if you get the cards you need at that moment, or you've got them in the hand that you've kept them, etc. And often the reality is you will find you have a mixed bag. You will not have the cards you will need. So in this example of play here, the Soviet player is actually pulling 6 cards, so their hand is 6 cards, and for quite a while at the beginning of the game, and the Soviet player is wanting to move his troops across the map to gain the victory points to exit the map from this sort of way, simply couldn't move because he just didn't have any move cards in their hand. And that can be that can lead to one or two things from the player's point of view. It can lead to great moments of narrative, like things happen, cards have actions, these things you can do with cards in your opposing player's turn, and it can lead to these really unexpected, memorable moments, which is great. Or it can lead to the player sitting there and not being able to do almost anything, or anything that they want to do, because they simply don't have the cards. And for some players, and I'm just being honest about this, for some players that's great, and for some players it is incredibly frustrating. And a lot of the reviews, players will fit into one of those two camps. Some people love the card-driven actions because they love the unpredictableness. They love, let's pick another example here. Look, I've got, let's just look, yeah, right. Let's say as a German player, I've got these 4 cards in my hand. Command Confusion, which doesn't do anything. Artillery Request, can't use that because I don't have a radio. Recover, don't need that. So in this example, so I can't do anything when it's my turn. I can't do anything. I'd be ditching those cards, putting some new ones ready for my next turn, and that can go on and on and on, right? Equally though, the German player could have pulled numerous fire cards, which is probably what they would want to be pulling, and firing at this unit here out in the open, firing at this unit here out in the open. They've got an heavy MG 42, BMG 38 because it's 1941, etc. You know, and they would be getting the cards they need, being able to do all the things they want to do, and wreaking havoc on the other player. But if you don't get the cards you need, you can't. And like I said, that's going to lead to either frustration or memorable moments, depending on the flow of the game. And so for that, I like these mechanics. I personally like them because I've had some great gaming moments by the look of the card draw. Equally, I've had some games we've been sitting there for like half an hour and no one's really doing anything. Nothing's really happening because of the card draw, right? Because of the card pull. And that can be great or not. What I would say is the actual mechanics themselves are all very straightforward. How you fire, you're using one squad as the sort of main firer, and then you can have some, additional firers on top. You're using cards. The other thing I should have said, you don't have any dice. Instead, you use the cards. So let's suppose I've got this squad here, just of this rifle with this light machine gun firing at this squad here. I would use the cards for every dice roll. So, for example, I get a 7 because it's got a 7. That triggers an event because it has an event. I then pull another card to see what the event is. I play out the event. It actually flows really nicely and it makes a lot of sense, and it can lead to these brilliant, and I've had some games which have been, you could have never orchestrated what happens in a normal tactical World War II game. It's the things that happen are simply what happens on the cards, and that was absolutely brilliant. The same with movement. It's very straightforward. Morale, it's all very straightforward. If you get the right cards, the actual mechanics are really simple and they make a ton of sense. And once you've played it once, you'll have it down. Where the game shines or not, depending on your point of view, is the fact it's card driven. So overall, some concluding thoughts. I like all the components. The counters are great. I like the aesthetics of the map. I get that it's functional, really. I like all the mechanics. I like how they do firing. I like how movement works. I like how morale works. It all makes sense. I would say, if I'm being honest, the key way to eliminate the enemies is to engage them in close combat. That's not that unusual for a tactical game. If you're just firing at them from a distance, it's unusual from my experience that you'll be able to do significant enough damage. It often, you engage them in fire and then you engage them in close combat. But I like all the mechanics. I think they all work really well. I like the fact you get so much content, numerous scenarios, create your own scenarios, 3 different nations in one game. It's all great. The card-driven aspect of the game is the key aspect. Now, I've had games where I have really enjoyed it. I've had games, like I said, where because of the cards, because of the events on the card, because of the actions, and I can play cards in my opponent's turn, it's been brilliant and it's been fun, and there's been some real turn of events in the game. Things have caught fire and the fire has spread. Now, all these things can and do exist in other tactical games, but because you're not in control of them, as it were, they're happening to you, it creates a sort of different dynamic. I've enjoyed all that. Conversely, I have played games of this game where, like I said, we've sat there for an hour and nothing really has happened, and it's quite frustrating in a way. So I think a lot of people's experience of the game and their views of the game is based on that experience they've had. So maybe you've only played it once, and it can be brilliant, or it might not be, in terms of the events and how you feel as a player. But what I would say is that there's if you play a lot of other tactical World War II war games, which I do, this is not like any of them in any way, shape, or form, and you can't think of it in that same way. And I think that's interesting, and it gives a different, fresh approach to it. And I like the game for all that. So yeah, I would say if the idea of you not being able to do everything you want to do isn't for you, if you're not keen on card-driven games, it's probably not for you. But if you're interested in a different type of tactical experience, I think it's a wonderful game. Playing solo, I have played the game solo quite a few times, and I have enjoyed my solo sessions. It's very different, and it's different because you don't have that. Well, while you're doing something, your opposing player is going to play a card, and it disrupts what you were going to do. That's just hard to do. I think playing solo can be done to some extent, but you do lose a little something. Equally, though, playing it solitaire, you can create these really rich narratives through the card play when you're playing both sides rather than preferring one. So I have enjoyed playing it solitaire, and I know other people do as well, but I think you do lose a certain something that the two-player game has. There's no solitaire bot or anything like that. And there are other people that give it recommendations of how to play cards solo. I have my own. I literally have a smaller hand, and I play the cards that make the most sense, and so forth, and it flows quite nicely. So yeah, if you like the ideas behind this game, I think it's a great game, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. My only caveat is, for some people, it will drive you to tears of frustration, but for others, memorable, great gaming experiences, which is what I love about the game. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, as ever.